We're live from New Delhi, watching DD India Live, India's voice to the world. I'm Lipakshi Khurana, coming up in the next 30 minutes. Defence Minister Rajnath Singh and Chinese counterpart Admiral Dong Jun hold constructive talks on sidelines of SCO meet in Qingdao. Leaders engage in forward-looking dialogue on bilateral ties. Iran denies Donald Trump's claim of nuclear negotiations progress, says no plans to hold talks. Iran's Khamenei, in first reaction since ceasefire, vows never to yield to US pressure. European Union leaders discuss new proposals from the United States on a trade deal at a summit in Brussels as Trump's tariffs relaxation to expire on July 9th, which could hammer exporters from cars to pharmaceuticals. Congo and Rwanda to sign a peace deal in Washington, likely to end years of conflict with roots in Rwanda's 1994 genocide. India scripts history with title hat-trick in Asian Squash Double Championship, clinches all three titles, men, women's and mixed doubles. And on to the details now. Defence Minister Rajnath Singh held talks with his Chinese counterpart Admiral Dong Jun on the sidelines of the SCO Defence Ministers meeting in Qingdao. The leaders had a constructive and forward-looking exchange of views on issues pertaining to bilateral relations. Both also expressed happiness on restarting of the Kailash Mansarovar Yatra after a gap of nearly 6 years. It is incumbent on both sides to maintain this positive momentum and avoid adding new complexities in the bilateral relationship. Defence Minister Rajnath Singh presented a Madhubani painting from Bihar to his Chinese counterpart, General Dong Jun, during their meeting on the sidelines of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization Defence Ministers meeting in China's Qingdao. This painting has its origins in the Mithila region of Bihar. It is also known as Mithila or Madhubani art. These paintings are popular because of their tribal motifs and use of bright, earthy colors. An Indian Defence Minister also held a bilateral meeting with his Russian counterpart Andrei Belousov on the sidelines of the SCO Defence Ministers meeting in Qingdao on Thursday. The two ministers held in-depth discussions on a range of subjects covering current geopolitical situations, cross-border terrorism and Indo-Russian defence cooperation. The Russian Defence Minister highlighted the long-standing Indo-Russian relations which have stood the test of time and expressed solidarity with India on the horrendous and cowardly terrorist act of 22nd April in Pahalgam, Jammu Kashmir. Well, ahead of a key meeting of the Quad in Washington, D.C. next week, India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar held a phone conversation with his Australian counterpart Penny Wong. Sharing on social media platform X, he wrote, and I quote, "A good discussion with FM Senator Wong of Australia before we head out for the Quad next week, exchanged views on a bilateral cooperation and the Indo-Pacific," unquote. Separately, Dr. S. Jaishankar also held a phone conversation with Qatari Prime Minister Mohammed bin Abdulrahman Al Thani. Al Thani is also Qatar's foreign minister. The leaders appreciated his assessment of the regional situation. They also discussed bilateral agenda. Well, the Quad Foreign Ministers meeting in Washington, D.C. is likely to broadly deliberate on the agenda for the annual summit of the grouping. The summit is expected to deliberate on specific steps to bolster cooperation in the maritime domain. And India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar attended the inaugural session of mock parliament organized by the Bharatiya Janata Yuva Morcha in New Delhi to mark 50 years since the emergency was declared in 1975. Speaking on the occasion, Minister Jaishankar emphasized the need of discussing and debating the dark chapter of emergency, noting that the period was a reminder of how democracy is in India's DNA.
सोसाइटल रेजिस्टेंस जो थी इमरजेंसी के खिलाफ, उसके कारण 77 का चुनाव। और मैं कहूँगा कि इमरजेंसी से ये साबित हुआ कि डेमोक्रेसी जो है हम लोगों के खून में है, हमारे डीएनए में है, और हम किसी भी हालत में हमारी जो डेमोक्रेसी जो है, जो फ्रीडम जो है, जो कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन जो है, इसको हम भारत की जनता हर समय इसकी सुरक्षा करेगी, कोई खोने के लिए तैयार नहीं।
Well, updates on Operation Synindu now. A special evacuation flight from Armenia carrying 173 Indian nationals living in Iran landed in the national capital late on Thursday evening. Evacuees expressed gratitude to the government for bringing them back safely to India. A total of 4,415 Indian nationals have been evacuated so far under Operation Synindu. 3,597 Indians evacuated from Iran, while 818 others evacuated from Israel using 19 special evacuation flights, including 3 IAF aircraft. Well, 14 overseas citizenship of India card holders, 9 Nepali nationals, 4 Sri Lankan nationals and 1 Iranian spouse of an Indian national were also evacuated from Iran. Also, India on Thursday expressed gratitude to the governments of Israel, Iran, Jordan, Egypt, Armenia and Turkmenistan for their support in the evacuation efforts carried out under ongoing Operation Synindu.
We are thankful to the governments of Egypt, Jordan for this support. Our embassies in Israel, in Jordan, in Egypt collaborated very closely with the ministry headquarters here in mounting this operation. And once again, we would like to thank the governments of Israel, Jordan and Egypt for this support in Operation Synindu. But we'd also like to thank the governments of Iran. As you would know that we made a request and they opened their airspace for us to evacuate our nationals. We are grateful to the government of Iran for this special gesture. We are also thankful to the government of Turkmenistan and Armenia for helping us evacuate our people.
Moving on, the Election Commission of India has started proceedings for the delisting of 345 registered, unrecognized political parties across the country. These parties, according to the Election Commission, have failed to contest a single election since 2019 and are untraceable at their registered addresses. The poll panel, in its press statement issued on Thursday, stated that out of the over 2,800 RUPPs currently registered, many no longer meet the basic requirements for continued registration under Section 29A of the Representation of the People's Act 1951. Under this provision, any association once registered as a political party gets certain privileges and advantages such as tax exemptions amongst others. The move is seen as a step towards curbing misuse of political registration for undue advantages. And recognizing the critical role of MSMEs worldwide, the United Nations designated June 27th as International MSME Day in 2017. This year, the Ministry of MSME is celebrating Uddami Bharat MSME Day. The theme for 2025 focuses on enhancing the role of MSMEs as drivers of sustainable growth and innovation. According to our data, micro, small and medium enterprises form the backbone of both the Indian and global economy. In India, they are a key pillar of growth, contributing around 30% to the GDP and over 45% to the country's exports. Globally, MSMEs represent the most dominant segment of the business ecosystem, accounting for nearly 90% of enterprises and over 50% of total employment. In India, they hold a similar significance, emerging as the second largest employer after agriculture. Well, the Jagannath Rathatra begins today in Puri in the eastern Indian state of Odisha. It is a vibrant Hindu festival that draws devotees from across the world. For 9 days, millions witness Lord Jagannath, Balabhadra and Subhadra journey from Jagannath Temple to Gundicha Temple in massive ornate wooden chariots, symbolizing a visit to the answer board. Dating back to the 12th century, this ancient procession celebrates unity and equality. Pulling the chariots is believed to cleanse sins and grant spiritual liberation. The festival, concluding with the Bahuda Yatra on the 5th of July, embodies devotion, cultural heritage and communal harmony. Well, also, the Yatra transcends religious boundaries, inviting people of all faiths to participate, embodying equality and unity. Pulling the chariots is considered a sacred act, believed to absolve sins and grant moksha or spiritual liberation. The festival also showcases Odisha's art, music and dance, with devotees chanting hymns like Jai Jagannath and performing traditional rituals. The sacred festival, steeped in history and devotion, remains a testament to India's spiritual and cultural heritage, uniting millions in celebration. Also, President Draupadi Murmu extended her wishes on the Rath Yatra. She wrote on X, and I quote, "On the occasion of the sacred Rath Yatra, I extend my heartfelt greetings to the devotees of Lord Jagannath residing in India and abroad. Millions of devotees attain a divine experience by having the darshan of the revered deities. Balabhadra, Lord Sri Jagannath, Goddess Subhadra and Chakrara Sudarshan seated on the chariot. The human-like divine play of these godly forms is the speciality of the Rath Yatra. On this auspicious occasion, my prayers to Lord Sri Jagannath is that an atmosphere of peace, friendship and affection prevails throughout the world." Unquote. Prime Minister Narendra Modi also extended his greetings on the occasion of the Holy Rath Yatra. The Prime Minister posted a video to mark the occasion.
जगन्नाथ है तो जीवन है। भगवान जगन्नाथ
On the auspicious occasion of Rath Yatra, Home Minister Amit Shah also participated in the Mangal Aarti at the Sri Jagannath Temple in Gujarat's Ahmedabad. He described it on X as a divine and extraordinary experience. After offering his prayers at the temple, the minister also extended greetings to the nation via an X post. Vibrant celebrations filled Digha's Jagannath Temple in West Bengal as devotees joined the Jagannath Rath Yatra. With fervent chants, they pulled the grand chariots of Lord Jagannath, Balabhadra and Subhadra through crowded streets. Colorful processions, traditional music and shared devotion created an atmosphere of unity, joy and spiritual reverence. And still to come in this edition of DD India Live. Argentine teachers protest for more education funding. Greek firefighters battle wildfire near Athens, evacuate residents as high winds fan flames. And Cristiano Ronaldo nearing 2-year extension with Al Nassr despite exit speculation.
US launch a bombing campaign against Iran. The Philippines vessel suffered structural damage. The saga of child sexual abuse is the United States China's debt trap strategy. Truth is stranger than fiction. But sometimes hard to uncover. Trust us to tell the truth, unadulterated and pure, of every story that matters to you.
save your.
You read between the lines, cut the clutter, and connect the dots to get you the full picture. Watch Connecting the Dots at these times with me, only on
Welcome back. You're watching DD India Live. I'm Lipakshi Khurana. And moving on, Iran denied it is set to resume nuclear talks with the United States after the end of a 12-day conflict with Israel and accused Washington of exaggerating the impact of U.S. strikes. Iran's foreign ministry has firmly denied that any agreement has been reached to resume nuclear negotiations with the United States, warning that future discussions will be even more difficult following recent military strikes. President Trump had said on Wednesday that the U.S. and Iran would meet next week, describing the recent Pentagon strikes on Iranian nuclear sites as a success. However, the White House walked back that claim on Thursday. Speaking on Iranian state television, Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi dismissed reports of an imminent diplomatic breakthrough. Araghchi said the damages to nuclear sites were not little and that relevant authorities were figuring out the new realities of Iran's nuclear program. Baghchi also accused Washington of never intending to negotiate sincerely. He said the scheduled talks in Oman before Israel's attacks were evidence that the U.S. was not acting in good faith. Well, European Union leaders met in Brussels on Thursday to review fresh U.S. proposals for a potential trade deal, with the July 9th deadline approaching to avoid increased U.S. tariffs threatened by President Donald Trump. EU nations are under pressure to find a united stance. The proposed tariffs could significantly hurt major European exporters, including the auto and pharmaceutical industries. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen confirmed that the EU had received a new draft from the US and was still evaluating it. She cautioned that there's a risk the negotiations could fail, emphasizing that all options remain on the table.
So our message today is clear. We are ready for a deal. At the same time, we are preparing for the possibility that no satisfactory agreement is reached. This is why we consulted on a rebalancing list, and we will defend the European interest as needed. In short, all options remain on the table.
While leaders were divided on whether to accelerate a deal or hold out for better terms, German Chancellor Friedrich Merz advocated for a quick and simple agreement, warning against unnecessary delays. He also expressed a general support for finalizing the Mercosur deal with South America.
Ich habe deswegen auch mit den Kollegen zusammen gesagt, lass uns jetzt bitte schnell zu einer Lösung kommen. Ich habe unter anderem auch auf einzelne Industrien hingewiesen, die wir in Deutschland haben, die chemische Industrie, die pharmazeutische Industrie, der Maschinenbau, Stahl, Aluminium, Automobilindustrie, die werden zurzeit alle mit so hohen Zöllen belastet, dass das die Unternehmen wirklich gefährdet und deswegen lieber jetzt schnell und einfach als langsam und hochkompliziert. Wir müssen jetzt schnell zu einem Ergebnis kommen. Und darüber sind wir uns auch alle einig gewesen, da gibt es überhaupt keinen Dissens.
Well, however, French President Emmanuel Macron disagreed, saying he could not endorse the Mercosur agreement in its present form. Macron, while in favor of a pragmatic and timely U.S. trade deal, insisted that any agreement must be fair and balanced.
C'est que nous concluons rapidement, ce qui marque, et je peux le dire ici, il y a une vraie volonté des Européens, une bonne volonté de conclure. Mais cette bonne volonté ne doit pas être vue comme une faiblesse. Nous voulons conclure rapidement parce que c'est notre intérêt collectif et c'est bon pour la stabilité du commerce international et pour nos entreprises, mais on ne veut pas conclure vite à tout prix. Une chose.
Well, U.S. President Donald Trump said on Thursday that America has signed a deal with China. Trump made the remarks while speaking at the Big Beautiful Bill event. After talks in Geneva in May, Washington and Beijing had agreed to temporarily lower steep tit-for-tat tariffs on each other's products. China also committed to easing some non-tariff countermeasures, but U.S. officials later accused Beijing of violating the pact and slow-walking export license approvals for rare earths. Both sides eventually agreed on a framework to move forward with their Geneva consensus following talks in London this month. Also, the White House indicated that Washington could extend a July deadline when steeper tariffs impacting dozens of economies are due to kick in. That pause is set to expire on July 9th.
The deadline is not critical. The president can simply provide these countries with a deal if they refuse to make us one by the deadline, and that means the president can pick a reciprocal tariff rate that he believes is advantageous for the United States and for the American worker, and he will continue to do that. But as for the deals, our United States Trade Ambassador, Jameson Greer, I speak to him frequently. He's working very hard, and he has had very good and productive discussions with many of our key trading partners.
And moving on, the Center for Disease Control and Prevention's panel of vaccine advisors voted on Thursday in the first official move after U.S. Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. fired the committee's previous experts and replaced them with his own picks. They voted 5-1 in favor. The vote marked the first by the Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices since Kennedy abruptly fired all 17 members of the ACIP earlier this month, accusing them of conflicts of interest and replaced them with his own nominees. A majority of the committee approved updated recommendations for a new shot for respiratory syncytial virus or RSV and voted to urge Americans to avoid a small number of flu vaccines that use the preservative thimerosal despite evidence of its safety. Votes by the panel are closely watched by health authorities because they're tied to federal policies and programs that enable access to vaccines, including requirements for insurance coverage and funding to provide shots for uninsured children. Other vaccines were also being discussed by the panel but not voted on, including those for COVID-19, measles, chikungunya and anthrax. Kennedy's new committee also announced on Wednesday that it would start a renewed review for all recommended pediatric vaccines. And thousands of Argentine university teachers, students and staff marched towards the Ministry of Education on Thursday, carrying candles and torches to demand more funds for education. Nationwide protests erupted as demonstrators demanded better pay for university staff and the passage of a university funding law. Also, healthcare workers from one of Buenos Aires' leading medical centers marched through the city on Thursday to protest drastic budget cuts that are severely impacting hospital operations and leaving staff with wages that scarcely meet their basic needs. The protesters demanded immediate action to address the deepening crisis in the country's healthcare system. The protests highlight rising discontent with President Javier Milei's aggressive government spending cuts. And Congolese and Rwandan officials are expected to sign a peace deal in Washington on Friday following a diplomatic push by U.S. President Donald Trump's administration to end years of conflict with roots in Rwanda's 1994 genocide. The agreement aims to attract Western investment to the two countries' mining sectors, which boast deposits of tantalum, gold, cobalt, copper and lithium, while giving the U.S. access to critical minerals. Congolese negotiators have dropped a demand that Rwandan troops immediately leave Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo, paving the way for a U.S.-brokered peace agreement to be signed today. Rwanda has sent at least 7,000 soldiers over the border in support of the M23 rebels, who seized Eastern Congo's two largest cities and lucrative mining areas earlier this year. Rwanda has long denied providing arms and troops to M23 and says it is acting in self-defense. Washington was pushing for Rwanda to withdraw its troops before the deal signing, a precondition that was also included in a U.S.-prepared draft authenticated by the diplomats. And the Greek firefighters on Thursday battled a wildfire that burned residences and holiday houses near the coastal town of Palaika-Fokia, 40 kilometers south of Athens, forcing people to flee. In the area of Palaika-Fokia, 130 firefighters were supported by 12 aircraft and 12 helicopters as they sought to put out flames that were whipped up by high winds. Fire brigade spokesperson said Greek police have moved to safety 40 people, adding that Coast Guard vessels had sailed to the area to assist with more evacuations if needed. Authorities said the risk of wildfires would remain high on Friday before the weather got cooler. And on to some sports news now. India's cricket history and the ongoing Asian Squash Double Championships in Kuala Lumpur, securing top podium finish in all three categories, men's, women and mixed doubles. The top-seeded men's pair of Abhay Singh and Velavan Senthil Kumar beat their Pakistani opponents Noor Zaman and Nasir Iqbal in the summit clash. In the women double final, second seed Joshna Chinappa and Anahat Singh outplayed Malaysia's Ayana Amani and Yi Shin Ying too in the title clash. The top-seeded mixed double pair of Abhay and Anahat made it a clean sweep of titles for India as they beat Malaysia's Rasher Arnold and Amishan Raj Chandran 2-0 in the summit showdown. And Cristiano Ronaldo is set to continue his journey with Saudi Arabian club Al Nassr for another 2 years after signing one of the most lucrative contracts with the club. Sharing the news on his social media handle, Ronaldo said in a quote, "A new chapter begins. Same passion, same dream. Let's make history together," unquote. Ronaldo, who joined Al Nassr in 2022 after leaving Manchester United to become a free agent for the Saudi club, he scored 93 goals in 105 appearances in all competitions. All right, that's all for this edition of DD India Live, but let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. For those on the go, you can get all the latest news and updates from India and across the world on the DD India mobile app. The app is available on both Android and iOS platforms. Scan the QR code on the screen to download now. Well, we'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Nipakshi Khurana from all of us here in Delhi. Thanks for watching DD India Live.